Good afternoon, and welcome to the Baldrige Foundation's quarterly webinar for the fourth fiscal quarter 2018. As a reminder, due to the high number of participants, all will be kept on mute during the presentations. If you have questions, please submit them to the moderator in the questions box on the control screen. Presenters will answer questions at the end of each presentation. Here's today's agenda. Ben Sawyer, the President and CEO of SOAR Vision Group, will give a presentation on strategy execution, followed by questions. Then, updates from the Baldrige Foundation, the Baldrige Program, and the Alliance for Performance Excellence, with closing remarks. First, a special thanks to our foundation partners, the Synergy Organization, providing exceptional evidence-based executive search, assessments, and consulting. Beyond Feedback, designing stakeholder insight programs that align to Baldrige. Walden University, providing a variety of educational opportunities and credit to members of the Baldrige community. And our newest partner, the SOAR Vision Group. SOAR Vision Group provides a strategy execution system that aligns people with purpose to achieve exceptional results. The system aligns with and supports the Baldrige criteria, and when coupled with a Baldrige coaching and consulting, provides a robust approach to accelerating performance and achieving results much faster. SOAR is helping to promote Baldrige consulting services through Baldrige Connect and bring Baldrige to organizations not previously exposed to the Baldrige framework. The Baldrige Foundation and SOAR have worked closely to establish a leader dialogue site that can be accessed from the Foundation website or directly on the SOAR website. There, you will find articles, blogs, and access to podcasts co-hosted by SOAR and the Foundation on our weekly radio show, Leader Dialogue, on Gwinnett Radio X each Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with recorded versions available on their website. We encourage the entire Baldrige community to contribute to these sites and to share their best practices. Also, on October 18 and 19, the Baldrige Foundation, in partnership with SOAR and the Wall Street Journal, will host our first Healthcare CEO Innovation Council Roundtable event, Performance Excellence in the Age of Consumerism. Attending will be a select group of 20 senior leaders from well-known hospitals and hospital systems like the Cleveland Clinic, Johns Hopkins, and Charleston Area Medical Center, and others. Now, it is a privilege to introduce Ben Sawyer, the President and CEO of SOAR Vision Group. Ben, thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure, Al, and thank you for that introduction. So what I wanted to review with everyone on the webinar today is the new normal of communication and communicating about performance excellence solutions in the age of consumerism. So let's start with what we know. In today's world, there is an onslaught of solution communication in a variety of different mechanisms, and what needs to stand out is the Baldrige message. It clearly is the superior solution. The challenge is that many of the business audience are taking information in unique ways. And if we don't communicate that information in ways that are interesting to them and relevant to them, they'll miss it and potentially not take advantage of the Baldrige and the performance excellence opportunities that are therein. So there are generally 6 challenges associated, or requirements, I would say, related to communicating effectively to the business audience in the age of consumerism. And what you can see here is a graphic, a customer-centric culture graphic that gives you an idea of the kinds of things that are important in this communication. We've highlighted one, which is kind of a visual map, if you will, of the customer journey and life cycle. But specifically, the requirements are there has to be a clear clarification of the challenge. What is the problem that you're trying to solve that they would be interested in? Second, how is that solution visualized? This is a very, in the age of consumerism, everything is visual. It's all web-based, YouTube, etc. So if you're sending something through in single space, 8-font, large documents, it will not be consumed. And as most of us know, millennials take in most of their information through podcasts. They're not using traditional sources like newspapers and so forth as much as were used in the past. So solution visualization is really important. Third is relevant communication, meaning it needs to be relevant to the challenges they're experiencing and meaningful relative to the visualization. It then has to be readily applicable. As you all know from interacting with your teens or younger adults, if it's not readily applicable, they're going to move on because they've got other things to do. It's important. All of us actually are that way. So it has to be readily applicable, and there has to be an ability to then accelerate essentially from the strategy that they have to the results that they want to achieve. If there's not an ability to accelerate, it's going to take too long, they will probably lose interest. So let's just unpack this a little bit together, starting with number one, the clarification of the challenge. So when we talk about strategy execution as an example, we graphically represent that in most organizations or many organizations, they experience strategy frustration because the three legs of that stool are not working well for them. So first of all, symptomatically, research shows, and this is coming from some research done in the Harvard Business Review, recently published, is that only 5% of employees understand how their job connects to the organization's strategy. And in another study done by John Cotter, he set up a study where there were 6 strategy execution plans, or I should say strategy plans from corporations. He put them in a conference room on the table, invited managers in, the names of the companies were redacted, and all the middle managers had to do was just find their company's strategic plan, and only 21% of them could do that. In another book by Jamie Zook, he identified that 7 of 8 companies, or 87%, fail to achieve their profitability targets because they cannot execute on their strategy. So this ties back to the insufficiency of current strategy execution, which means that we have annual strategic planning retreats, which many of you know can be regret sessions, right? We look back and kind of regret that we haven't accomplished everything we wanted to. Then we have monthly meeting cycles that become largely meeting stew, right? So we're doing updates, we're talking about the things that are really the urgent of the day, the hot spots. And so it defaults kind of to our budget cycle. That becomes a proxy for our strategy execution, and this cycle repeats itself. So this is meaningful from a challenge clarification for the age of consumerism business user. We've used this effectively quite a few times. Let's move on to solution visualization. So how does the solution then get visualized and connect to the challenge? Well, in this case, we're going to use the same example, the stool with the legs, but now we're going to describe that the legs now are changed. Same model, but instead of having just an annual strategic planning retreat, there is a cascading scorecard that is representing everything that needs to be done from the senior leaders to the front line that is now managed essentially on a monthly basis. Instead of a meeting stew of discussions, there is the combination of a mission control where the leaders can see in real time what's going on. They now have visibility, and also a catchball process, which links the senior leadership cycle with weekly rounding with middle managers and even daily huddles with the front line to make sure that that occurs. And there are then dramatic improvements as a result of that in financial performance, customer value creation, organizational effectiveness, and colleague engagement. I think you can probably see what we're talking about now from the standpoint of message or challenge clarification and then solution visualization. Let's move on. Continuing with the solution visualization, let's just talk now about the Baldrige itself. So one of the things that Al and I and the teams, our respective teams, have been working on is how do we essentially create a visual Baldrige, right? Something that people can understand easily. And we came up with this organizational hierarchy of needs to represent that. And we made sure that it cross-mapped to the Baldrige. So it starts with strategy execution, the idea that you have to align people with purpose to achieve exceptional results. It then drops down to financial performance, right? So that you're managing cash flow, profitability, equity, and building shareholder value, which is based on delivering customer value, so tapping into demand, exceeding customer expectations, inspiring loyalty. And that is predicated on organizational effectiveness, which you can see those boxes. And ultimately, the foundation is colleague engagement, right? So all of you see the principles and the guidelines of the Baldrige in that, but it's a visual representation. And then just to underscore that, here on the left, we recognize that permeating all of that has to be effective leadership and persistent curiosity. So the way that we connect with that then as a supporting partner of the Baldrige is identify that best performing organizations innovate or strategize and then execute seamlessly on every category of performance that matters. In other words, not every category of performance is going to be as meaningful in the life cycle of businesses other times, even though all of them have to be addressed. So when they are looking then at strategy execution, they need to organize or differentiate their performance, activate, meaning engaging associates to execute seamlessly, and then recalibrate consistently, right? The continuous improvement to measure performance to expectations and adjust course as necessary. And by the way, I'm sure you haven't missed, that's our acronym. SOAR is strategize, organize, activate, and recalibrate. And regardless of the organization's maturity journey, winners always clarify what matters and then execute seamlessly. So here's another example of solution visualization, which is the representative model of the Baldrige and its respective categories. It gets into obviously substantial detail when you unlock these. So one of the things that we talk about with the market in terms of visualization is that a key within this is to be able to accelerate from your strategy focus to results, and that will help you achieve accelerated returns to your effort, which is, again, another very, very important message in the age of consumerism. We also, in our collaboration with Communities of Excellence, so Lowell Cruz and Rick Norling and Stephanie Norling, are also using the same sort of visual description where there's a community profile, there's strategy, but there's a block sometimes between the strategy and the vision. This is where the failure mode occurs. And so we've identified the different components of it, including how when you have gaps and you're trying to engage to prioritize which ones to focus on first, strategy execution system, as we just described it visually, has great relevance. All right, let's move on and talk about then relevant communication. So Al spoke of the Leader Dialogue website. This website was designed not to sell anything, but simply to explain in a visual way to these business leaders in the age of consumerism what the Baldrige and what strategy execution could be to them. So they can explore, they can ask questions, they can get support. As Al has alluded, we are encouraging all of the Baldrige consultants as they wish to be able to blog on here and put their events on here and so forth. And it's also where we have, if you see this at the top, the Leader Dialogue radio show, which then is included as a podcast on this site. As you know from what I said previously, that's important, particularly to the millennial generation. Here's another example of then relevant communication. These are some of our guests on the radio show. This is Dr. Peck, who is the CEO of Piedmont Athens Regional, Cynthia Kay and LJ, who are the leaders of Alive Studios, a small business in the education space, Sandy McKenzie, who's the COO of Hamilton Health, I'm sure you recognize Russ Branzell, who is an important Baldrige collaborator, and then of course Paul Grizel, who we were just delighted to have on the radio show. So the idea again is here's a way to make it meaningful. And right now, this radio show has about 75,000 downloads per episode of the podcast through the Leader Dialogue site. So that's about the size of the viewing audience right now, and it continues to grow. As Al also alluded to, we are putting together executive roundtables by business vertical. We're starting with healthcare, and what we're doing is identifying topics that are high trending topics in that particular sector. Right now, performance excellence in the age of consumerism is a very high trending topic in healthcare. And we also are making sure that we develop a very attractive and informational and engaging agenda. So starting with Morten Hansen doing the keynote. Many of you have heard of Morten. He was the co-author of Good to Great with Jim Collins and has just published the last book in the Great series called Great at Work. So we're looking forward to his kickoff there. This is an intimate, as Al alluded to, 20 executive forum. There will be a white paper generated, and in collaboration with the Wall Street Journal, there will be a number of different articles that come out of that. Again, all about providing significant visibility for the Baldrige, and we've been able to identify a number of very important sponsors that are enabling this event to occur. HCI Group, Verge Health, and Tech Mahindra, in addition to our company. Let's talk next about a readily applicable structure in terms of the age of consumerism. So when people are looking at structure, they want to understand how what they're experiencing as their pain points actually has value in terms of the effect. So again, our visual in the middle is that most organizations can classify their gaps either as a visibility gap, so they don't know exactly what's happening in real time. They have retrospective data, but it's not necessarily in real time or relevant, right? Because we all have a lot of data, but the question is it relevant? There are knowledge gaps, as we had identified earlier. Remember, only 5% of employees understand how their work connects to the strategy, and only 21% of managers can actually identify and recognize their organization's strategic plan, which has implications in terms of knowledge. And that obviously leads to performance gaps as you're in organizations working across multiple silos, multiple roles. The coordination, orchestration of that is a challenge. So again, a visual. I won't go all through the pain points for sake of time, but as you may have been reading those as I've been talking, these are often common pain points, and the value proposition of a strategy execution system structure then is that it effectively aligns senior leader decision-making with frontline operations. It establishes a new review and cadence cycle. This is the catch-ball process. Very much engages employees, then empowering them to work together to act like owners to solve performance gaps. And in so doing, builds a culture of trust, developing exceptional brand and customer loyalty, thereby driving, again, what we talked about in the visual Baldrige, improved financial performance, expanding organizational and market capabilities. We further visualize that to help them understand what we do. I'm not going to spend much time on this slide. If you have questions afterwards, we can do that. But suffice it to say, it's a very visual representation of, you have a knowledge gap, we have e-learning courses, you have a performance gap, we have on-site support in collaboration with the Baldrige consultants to provide that framework that you need for strategy execution, including overcoming the visibility gap with software. All right, let's now go into the final stretch here. Acceleration from strategy to results. So this generation, the age of consumerism, is not going to take on things that they don't think they're going to get meaningful results in a reasonable time frame. So first of all, it's important to visualize with them what it's going to take to be successful. So to achieve desired results, they're going to need to optimize the capability and performance of people. process, technology, all around effective leadership, which you recall we clarified in that visual of effective leadership with persistent curiosity, and that is constantly talked about on the radio show and obviously is a major theme in these executive roundtables. A second visual is when you're accelerating from strategy to results, and don't get lost in the type here, just look at the example here. So you have, in this case, a health system, and then you have an individual down here. How do you connect them? How do you make sure it's vertically integrated? Well, turns out that's what a strategy execution system process is. You have a health system to a hospital, to a business operating unit, to a department, to a team, to an individual. That individual needs to know what their on-time, complete, and correct action is. The organization needs to be able to fulfill its vision and mission through a clear system, strategies, objectives, so that initiatives, action items, and performance measures cascade down. And then there needs to be this catch-ball process for continuous improvement, incorporating plan, do, learn, and adjust, or plan, do, check, and act, which is the Edward Deming's approach that he pioneered. So the idea is that at every level, there is this improvement process, and that it starts with the organization's why, clarifies their how, and ultimately gets to their what. So you're creating inspiration through purpose, cause, and belief. Another visual is the mission control. Help them see that they can visualize their vision and strategy, their objectives and initiatives, and their standard work, both in dashboards, in leadership planning A3s, and frontline operational A3s, which are improvement one-page tools, daily huddles, weekly rounding, and also another visual about communication to encourage them to align and engage in honest, robust dialogue to achieve alignment, and then reach commitment, translate that into accountability so that they can build results, create internal trust, drive customer loyalty, and the cycle continues. Also clarifying for them that this is a diagnostic. If they're not getting results, either accountability is not clear, commitment isn't there, they haven't really aligned because they haven't perhaps been honest, maybe they don't trust each other. So these are the kinds of things that, again, in an age of consumerism are critical for adoption. Last one on this. So here's a good example. When it's all put together, you have a cascading scorecard that allows you to accelerate feedback, to be able to then learn and adjust in near real time, align actions and measures, and then be able to update the strategy as you go on a monthly basis so that at the end of the year, it's not a regret session. It's a legitimate update and recalibration of what it is you want to do as an organization going forward. This is simply the steps that we use for that. I'm not going to spend any time on that today for sake of time. But again, you can see a visualization so that the business leader in their organization can easily understand how it progresses from launch, strategize, organize, activate, or calibrate. All right, let's put it all together. So we talked about visualizing the performance excellence for this generation in the age of consumerism so they can quickly see it, grasp it, understand its connection, understand what the essentials are, and then understand that it's going to drive results, that it actually is cross-mapped to the results category in Baldrige framework, and then reminding them about how winning organizations actually make that happen. Remember, they want to accelerate their transformation. Anything they can do to get from their strategy to their results as quickly as possible, they want to do. We have the responsibility to let them know that transformation obviously doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. It requires commitment, requires leadership, requires determination, discipline, all the things that we say there. But the question they're going to ask is, under what circumstances could we, right? Under what circumstances could we accelerate the transformation? And those are answers that we as a Baldrige community need to be able to answer. Any questions or comments on that?
Ben, we have a number of questions, but I'm going to give you the first one, which is, are you saying that if our collective communication about the benefits of Baldrige are not communicated in either one, the right way, visual, or using the right mechanism, podcasts, are we running the risk of not connecting to our business user audience?
Yeah, Al, that's a great question. And unfortunately, the answer is yes. I mean, no matter how good we are, if we're unable to connect with a visual audience who is being bombarded with a lot of other visual stimulation, and it's not meaningful to them, in other words, it's not in the mechanism or format like podcasts that they listen to it, they'll never hear us. And it will result in a deceleration of interest on the part of businesses and organizations towards the Baldrige. Again, not at all related to a devaluing of the Baldrige, but simply because we're not communicating it to them in a way that they can listen and engage.
Our next question is, why does the solution have to be immediately applicable? Don't today's business leaders understand that real transformation may take many years?
So the short answer to this is everyone has used Google now as a verb, right? How many of us, when we say, I know the answer to that, we Google it, right? So this generation in the age of consumerism does not accept anything that doesn't have an immediate answer. It has to be immediately applicable. I don't think once you engage a leader and you explain the comprehensiveness of it and what's required, that they would necessarily shy away from the fact that transformation takes years, but they will challenge you if you say that it takes 10 to 15 years, because as we know, the average life cycle of many CEOs is only 3 years. So what we have to be able to do is convey truth, convey reality, but also answer that important question that they're asking, which is, under what circumstances could we? Under what kind of framework or tools could we potentially accelerate that?
We have time for one more question, and so Ben, this will be the final one, and it is, why is a strategy execution framework necessary? Can an organization just figure it out on their own?
Yeah, so that's a great question. That's a great one to end with too. So again, many organizations struggle with the frustration of year over year not being able to execute on their strategy the way they wanted to. And they dig into it and they try to find out the reasons, and they recognize the symptoms and some of the root causes. In other words, the front line was never connected with what we were talking about. So yeah, we didn't get it done. The point is that unless there is a structure that replaces that three-legged stool that we talked about of the dependence on the annual strategic planning retreat, monthly meetings, which become monthly stew, and a default to the budget, which the problem is, of course, that's a scarcity model that is inherently competitive and is exactly the wrong type of characteristics that you want in a very collaborative, high orchestration strategy execution environment. It doesn't work very well, and it may take an organization a very long time to figure that out. And they could potentially just put together a framework, a loose sort of fragmented framework of a variety of different solutions to try to put that together. So we think, again, this is another way to be able to help meet the needs of business leaders in this age of consumerism. We can provide well-designed frameworks and tools that answer some of those why questions and allow organizations to be able to accelerate their transformation journeys.
Ben, thank you for your presentation here today. As a reminder to the audience, Ben can be reached through the SOAR Vision Group website, and you can Google it and find it immediately. Ben, if you turn the program back over, I'm going to go right into a foundation update. And the first slide I'll show here is the 4 strategic imperatives of the foundation. The one thing I'd like to just highlight between the last webinar and this webinar, the Baldrige Foundation started its own Baldrige journey, and this year submitted an organization organizational profile to an Alliance state-based program for feedback and was recognized by the Partnership for Excellence with their Spirit Award for beginning the Baldrige journey with an organizational profile. Goal next year is to have a 25-page application completed with TPE. So we're looking forward to that and our own journey. Next, I'd like to talk about is the advocacy piece and where we're at currently with the FY19 and 20 budgets. Both processes are moving along pretty much as expected. We expect a continuing resolution this year to take us past 1 October, and sometime in the December or January timeframe, seeing the FY19 budget, of which we fully expect the Baldrige program to be contained within that, as well as in the FY20 budget being produced by the administration now, which will be delivered to Congress by the first Monday in February of 2019, and we'll be tracking that as it makes its way both through the administration and then Congress. Just as a reminder, I would like to thank all of our state-based programs out there who work with us each and every day to maintain contact and build support and strengthen relationships with key members of Congress, especially in the Senate Commerce, Justice, Science Subcommittee, who has been very, very supportive of the Baldrige program. In terms of fundraising, just like to highlight the combined federal campaign season is about to get underway. And so there is an opportunity for all of the Alliance-based programs to go out to give presentations and to receive money from anybody who donates from within their state to their state-based program. 100% of that money will be going back to state programs this year as they collaborate with us to work the presentations throughout the federal government. All of the resources that you need, handouts, PowerPoint presentation, and other materials to include a training tutorial are available on the Baldrige Foundation website. We continue to build support through Amazon Smile, and since the last quarterly meeting, we have provided a tutorial on just how to register on Amazon Smile and make the Baldrige Foundation your charity of choice. This does not increase any amount to you at all, but you do have to remember, instead of going to Amazon or to Amazon Prime, to simply go to Amazon Smile to receive the same service and benefits that you receive, but a portion of all that you spend goes to the Baldrige Foundation. Also, as a reminder to all of our Alliance and state-based partners out there, Walden University is providing $3,000 in tuition grants for anyone who is a member of an Alliance award-winning organization or a national award recipient, and all of their employees. So take advantage of this. For a limited time, this $3,000 tuition grant applies to all of their degree accrediting programs and more than 435 specializations. As a reminder, Friday, tomorrow, close of business, is the deadline for awards to be submitted to the foundation for the E. David Spong Lifetime Achievement Award, the Harry Hertz Leadership Award, Foundation Leadership Excellence Awards, all of which will be presented at next year's Quest for Excellence Conference. In addition to that, please remember that the Ryman Baldrige Scholarship, which is new, we gave out the first 2 last year, will also be available, and all of that information is contained within our awards program submission nomination packet, which can be easily downloaded from the Baldrige Foundation website. At this time, I'm going to turn the podium over to Bob Fangmeyer, the director of the Baldrige Performance Excellence Program. Bob?
Thanks, Al, and thanks, Ben, for your presentation. It's very informative. Go on to the first slide there, Al, please. All right, so I thought I'd start with an update. Last time at the last quarterly webinar, I shared sort of what was happening with the award process, and so here I'll give you a little bit of an update. Out of the 27 applicants that we had this year, we have 12 that are receiving site visits. 3 of them are happening this week as we speak. Those are the 3 healthcare organizations. We also have 4 education organizations, 3 nonprofits, and 2 small businesses, 1 manufacturing and 1 service, that are having their site visits next week. The Baldrige judges will meet November 5 to 9, where they will be looking at all the information that the teams have generated and the reports that they have created based on their site visits in order to nominate the 2018 Baldrige Award recipients. We look forward to that. It's a very exciting time, and we hope to have a meeting with the Secretary of Commerce to place the calls to the new award recipients that following week, hopefully that Tuesday, but we won't know until we get closer to the date. The award process pilot, many of you know and have heard me talk about this. This is something that we are trying to do in order to, in part, accelerate the organization's improvement. And so we have been looking at how to revise the Baldrige Award process while retaining the rigor of the evaluation process, but streamlining the activities, simplify the requirements, while also adding more value to the examiners and to the applicants as a whole. So far through the pilot, the 6-member team has completed their independent analysis. It's different than the current process, so we didn't want to call it independent review for those who are familiar with the terminology. They've also gone through a new step, what we call a virtual site visit. We'll probably change that name because it was somewhat confusing. However, the team had an opportunity to spend a significant amount of time in dialogue with the organization before they finalized any findings, scores, or feedback. So that's one of the new potential changes here. Once they got through the virtual site visit, they went through a consensus process and identified their key findings and their scores. So they only had to do that once. Next is preparing their final report. The report has been drafted. There's a few things that need to be tweaked and updated on it, but that'll be released to the organization in hopefully a week or two. So next slide, please. What have we heard so far from the pilot team? The examiners definitely agree that the process is more efficient. It's taking them less time and less effort. It allows them to focus on their evaluation and adding value to the applicant rather than trying to craft finely tuned commentary. Both the examiners and the applicant really appreciated the virtual site visit component and believe that it adds value to the process. Now, there are a few things that we still do not yet know. One of them is the quality of the feedback. Does the applicant think that the new form of feedback is as good or perhaps even better than the previous approach? They can't answer that question until they get the report, obviously. We also don't yet know whether or not this revised process can be brought to scale with an average team. This team was a very experienced team. We wanted to bring people in who were very familiar with the current process, since there was a lot of real-time learning and improvement and changes to the process as we went through the pilot. And we believe, and we have so far at least, significantly reduced the overall cycle time for this. But once we go to scale, will we still be able to do so? So we still have a few open questions that we need to understand, and we'll continue to look at that as we figure out sort of our next steps with regards to the pilot and moving this forward. Next slide. Many of you probably know that we are in the process of revising the Baldrige Excellence Framework. We will release the new version of the business and nonprofit criteria on or in December of 2018. The healthcare and education will come out in January. Once we complete the healthcare and education, we'll be moving forward with updating the Baldrige Excellence Builder, the Cybersecurity Excellence Builder, which will be modified based on both the changes to the Baldrige framework as well as changes that have been made to the NIST cybersecurity framework. As a point of interest, I thought I would share with you that this past August, we had a meeting of the international programs in Sydney, Australia. And most of the international programs, excellence programs, are also in the process of updating their models. And I have to share that it's interesting Many of them, almost all of them, have a much longer cycle time in terms of their revision process. And a number of them have not yet integrated concepts that we've had in ours for 2, 4, or perhaps even more years. So it was, for me, a little bit of a reinforcement of the cycle time that we use in terms of updating our framework, because it was definitely, some of those things were things that we've been talking about for quite some time. Next slide, please. Last time I also shared that we had initiated a new survey that we had sent out to the Baldrige Award recipients, and we asked them about their perception of the impact of Baldrige on a number of different factors. And you can see the factors down the left-hand column of this. I'm not sure how well you can read them, but they deal with things such as your business results, your healthcare outcomes, educational outcomes, customer satisfaction and engagement, job growth, patient safety, patient satisfaction, engagement, etc. And of the award applicants, on virtually every one of the questions, 100% of the award recipients said that Baldrige improved those metrics. We expanded the survey to include all Baldrige applicants as well. And the Baldrige applicants responded very well also. You can see their responses in the, I guess that's an orange color on the bar chart. Slightly less than the award recipients, but still very, very strong results in terms of their belief of the impact of Baldrige on their organization. We have since expanded it to Baldrige Award examiners, and we are collecting their data. So far, the data is positioning the examiner somewhere in between the applicants and the award recipients. So still very, very strong results. We're very pleased with this, and we're expecting to hopefully spread this through the entire alliance and have the alliance programs share with their applicants, their other customers and examiners, etc. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to finish with just sharing with you some of our challenges and some of the initiatives that we've put in place to try and address those. Many of you who've been around have heard me talk about these. They're not new. First, re-engage with manufacturing and business. That's pretty much what we've been talking about almost this entire meeting. We all know that Baldrige started out as a business program primarily. We expanded into healthcare and education, then nonprofits. However, the business community has been harder to re-engage with in recent years. And so we are putting a fair amount of time and effort and energy into trying to make that happen. Presidential participation in the Baldrige Award ceremony, that has been lacking for some time, but it is something that we believe is critical. And I can assure you that the foundation agrees with that and been working very hard to ensure that we can try and get the president, whether it's this president or any and every future president, to participate. We're also looking to enhance the award applicant pipeline. And by that, what we're talking about is enhancing the number, the type, and the breadth of applicants that participate throughout the entire enterprise. So the state, local, regional programs, as well as the Baldrige program. And very closely related is strengthening the Baldrige enterprise itself. If any are unaware, the enterprise consists of the Baldrige program, the Baldrige Foundation, the Alliance for Performance Excellence, and ASQ. Now, some of the things we're doing to try and address these include the ongoing evolution of the Baldrige framework. The process we used this year was geared towards trying to ensure that we were hearing the voice of those who really are users of the framework and apply it within their organization. We've been working to evolve the framework to be as streamlined and simplified as possible, while still meeting the need to be sort of that standard of organization-wide excellence. We're still not sure we're quite there. We believe we're on the right path, and we are making some good progress. But it is definitely an ongoing process to streamline it as much as possible while meeting the needs. The award process redesign, that is intended to help accomplish several of these. We believe the overall length and cycle time of the process, the effort that has to go into it, both from applicants and examiners, is creating some challenges for the program and the overall enterprise, so we're trying to improve that. Communities of excellence, it was touched on earlier. Certainly this is a grand opportunity for both the Baldrige program and the larger enterprise to have an impact in an area of national need, but also by doing so, bring greater awareness of Baldrige and interest in Baldrige to those individual organizations, businesses, healthcare organizations, education, nonprofits, et cetera, within all of those communities that we're working with through Communities of Excellence. Cybersecurity is something that we have stepped into, another area of national need. Many of you are familiar with our Baldrige Cybersecurity Excellence Builder. Throughout this process, we've been partnering with organizations that specialize in cybersecurity, organizations that are very concerned about cybersecurity, NIST Cybersecurity Division, which are the individuals who had helped to or actually created the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. Moving forward, we're hoping to partner with them and with others on an even deeper level. We'll continue to hold workshops, et cetera, but we expect to be able to participate with them in the upcoming conference this November in Baltimore that's featuring the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. Thank you. Finally, as almost an outgrowth of that, there was a new executive order that asked NIST to create a privacy framework similar to the cybersecurity framework. And we are in early dialogue with the NIST cybersecurity folks and privacy folks to determine what, if any, role Baldrige should play in that effort at this time. There's an expectation that we'll probably be involved downstream, but it might be one where we could have greater impact if we get involved sooner. So we're looking at that opportunity now. In addition, there was a recent executive order on really enhancing the American workforce. Out of that has come a couple of different opportunities. One is for us to help design at least propose a design for a process to recognize organizations that demonstrate excellence in workforce training, retraining, and workforce development. We are a part of a cross-agency task group that has been tasked with developing a plan and proposing it to a new National Council on the American Workforce. So we'll see where that leads. We're hoping that will give us greater opportunity to engage with organizations, recognize some high-performing organizations, but it's not entirely up to us. So we'll have to see how much influence we can exert to move this in the direction that we think it should go. Okay, I will stop there. I know we're tight on time, but if there's any questions, we can have them now, I guess, Al, or later. When would you like to do that?
Let's get through Brian's presentation next and then see if there's any questions at the end.
Great.
So at this time, I'll turn it over to Brian Lassiter, the chair of the Alliance for Performance Excellence. Brian?
Yeah, thank you, Al. Bob, Ben, good to hear from you as well. I'll keep my remarks pretty brief, and then we'll save time here at the end for some questions and dialogue. Just to remind everybody, the Alliance has been called the front door to Baldrige. I think most probably on the webinar know who we are, but for those that don't, we are a 501c3 organization, nonprofit founded about 11 years ago, with a mission of advancing Baldrige throughout the country. You see some of the statistics there that give a sense of our scale. We are 29 programs that represent all 50 states and U.S. territories, and a couple of sector-based programs that are advancing Baldrige within their sectors. Train 1,700 examiners a year, 40 staff, and 500 other non-examiner volunteers. So a pretty sizable organization. Our footprint is large, and our impact hopefully is even larger. Just want to share a couple of things that we're up to this last quarter since the last update. Next slide. Hopefully all of you are aware of the upcoming conference, the Baldrige Fall Conference that the Alliance hosts in collaboration with the Baldrige Program and the Foundation is October 23 and 4 in Denver. 24th is the main conference day, the 23rd is pre-conference, and this year features an unusual pre-conference experience, which is a bus trip up to Fort Collins, Colorado, to experience the City of Fort Collins' success and Elevations Credit Union. So it should be a great day of learning and seeing these principles in action. Attendance is still growing. There's some space available, but the numbers are already approaching last year's conference numbers with about a month ago. So we're really excited about the program that host states Rocky Mountain Performance Excellence and Wisconsin Center for Performance Excellence have put on. For those of you that don't know, Baldrige Express is a fairly new product of the Alliance. It was acquired about 2 years ago and really made functional about a year ago. It is an online behaviorally anchored survey that compresses the Baldrige criteria and scoring guidelines into about 40 to 45 questions that really accelerates the organization's beginning of a performance excellence journey. So it's a great way to get the perspective of your people, of what your strengths and OFEs are, and for those that are a little more hesitant to beginning a formal application writing experience, this is a nice entry point to begin to enjoy the benefits of Baldrige. So check that out on the Baldrige or the Alliance website, baldrigealliance.org, and you can find more information there. Bob mentioned a couple of strategic challenges and focus areas that the national program is pursuing. I'll list 4 here that the Alliance is involved with. 2 of them are in collaboration with the Baldrige Program and the Foundation and ASQ, and the other 2 are our own strategic initiatives that we've just launched a couple of task forces against in the last couple of months. The 2 that are enterprise-wide, I think Bob hinted on them, and so did Al. One is focused exclusively on business development, so it is a combined team from National Program Resources Alliance and Foundation to identify target markets to grow the use of Baldrige within those industries and sectors. And the other one is an examiner training task force that's, again, a joint task force that's trying to promote consistency across the entire enterprise of the examiner training, curriculum, and delivery, and so forth. Both are a couple of months into their work and have several months left of their work, but I'm encouraged about what'll come out of those two efforts. And then the 2 Alliance-only task forces. One is beginning the work to provide guidelines for lower levels of tiered awards. The Alliance created, with the help of the Baldrige Program, standards for our top tier awards probably about 6 years ago or so now, and trying to promote consistency across top-level awards throughout the nation. This is to provide guidelines, if not standards, for lower tiers across all of our programs. So that work is just beginning and will probably culminate in early 2019. And the other one is an effort to try to inventory and then share revenue generating and useful products and services across the Alliance. I think one of the unique aspects of the Alliance is that we're a collection of 29 fairly independent programs, and that does create its challenges in terms of consistency and redundancy and so forth, but it also creates opportunity for innovation and some really interesting value-added products across the country. So it's finding them and systematically sharing them across the Alliance for the benefit of more stakeholders. That's a bit about what we've been up to the last 3 months or so. So Al, I'm showing just a few minutes left, so I'll hand it back over to you to facilitate some Q&A.
Thank you, Brian. We did have a question that come from the audience, and Bob, I believe this one would be directed towards you. It concerns the pilot, and it is, during the discussions on the pilot, were documents shared or was it only verbal discussion?
Oh, for the virtual site visit component, yeah, it was the virtual site visit was dialogue. We debated whether or not we could effectively create a secure area to share documents, but ultimately decided we couldn't. And frankly, you know, we are not trying to eliminate the on-site site visit. That would still be sort of the final step, but all organizations would get the virtual site visit, and then that would result in at least the assumption is, a far better, more robust, more accurate understanding of the organization for the judges to make their decisions as to who should get a site visit. And if they don't get a site visit, it'll improve the quality of the feedback report that they receive.
Thanks, Bob. With no more questions, that concludes our webinar for today. As a reminder to the audience, the first fiscal quarter of 2019 webinar will be conducted by the Foundation on December 20th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And all of our webinars are recorded and available on the Baldrige Foundation website if you'd like to access them there. I want to thank again Ben Sawyer, the President and CEO of SOAR Vision Group, Bob Fangmeyer, the Director of the Baldrige Performance Excellence Program, and Brian Lassiter, the Chair of the Alliance for Performance Excellence, for today's webinar and preparing their materials. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day.
Thanks, all.
Thank you.